He thought it was just another quiet evening on the plains, until a bleeding boy collapsed at his feet, and by sunrise, 40 silent warriors stood outside his cabin, ready to kill. But what no one knew was that boy was not just a child. He was a warning. The sun was low, casting long shadows over the dry grasslands. The wind moved gently through the golden fields, making a sound like whispering voices. Elijah Grant, a man who had worked this land for 20 years, stood by the edge of a broken fence. He had been out since morning, mending wire and clearing brush. His hands were rough, his shoulders tired. He wiped the sweat from his brow and looked west. That was when he heard it, gunshots. Not one, not two, but several in quick, sharp bursts. They came from the hills beyond the old creek bed. The sound echoed across the plain, sharp and wrong. Elijah froze. He listened. Then silence. No birds. No wind. No reason for gunfire this far out, unless someone was hunting trouble. Elijah grabbed his canteen, slung his rifle over his shoulder, and whistled to his mare, Penny. She trotted over, calm as always. Without a word, he mounted her and rode toward the sound. The sun slipped lower as he reached the creek. The water here was barely a trickle in summer. He guided Penny around the rocks and thick sagebrush, his eyes scanning the land. That was when he saw him. A boy, no older than 12, hunched behind a boulder. His shirt was torn, soaked in blood near his ribs. His skin was dark, his black hair tangled. His hands were trembling, but his eyes were steady, wild and alert, like a fox cornered by hounds. Elijah stopped and slowly dismounted. He kept his hands open, away from his rifle. "I ain't here to hurt you," he said softly. "You alone?" The boy did not answer. He only watched Elijah, chest rising fast and shallow. "You're bleeding," Elijah said. "That shot hit close." Still no answer. The boy shifted, but winced. He was too weak to run. Elijah stepped a little closer. "You got a name, son?" The boy's lips parted, but no sound came. More sounds now, distant again, but closer than before. Hoofbeats. Voices. Men calling to each other. Elijah's heart sank. Whoever had fired those shots was still nearby, and they were coming this way. He looked back at the boy. Their eyes locked. In that moment, Elijah understood everything. This child was being hunted, not for what he had done, but for what he was. "Can you ride?" Elijah asked, voice low. The boy gave the slightest nod. "All right then. Come on." Elijah helped him up, careful not to press the wound. The boy was light, too light, and barely able to hold the saddle. But he did not complain. As the voices drew nearer, Elijah took the reins and led them away from the creek, toward his hidden cabin between the hills. He did not know who the boy was. He did not know who was chasing him. But he knew this. No child should be left bleeding in the dirt. And sometimes a man does not need all the answers to do what is right. Elijah's cabin sat in a dip between two hills, hidden from the main trail by brush and tall rock. He had built it years ago with his own hands, looking for quiet and distance from town. Tonight, that quiet was broken. He pushed the door open and helped the boy inside. The boy's legs gave out, and Elijah caught him before he hit the floor. "It's all right," Elijah said. "You're safe now." He lit a small lamp and shut the door behind them. The boy sat against the wall, breathing fast. His shirt was soaked with blood, his skin pale under the grime. Elijah knelt beside him and reached for a clean rag. "This is going to hurt, son," he warned. The boy gave a small nod, jaw tight. Elijah cut the shirt open and saw the wound, just a graze along the ribs. It was deep enough to bleed badly, but not deadly if treated right. He cleaned it with whiskey and wrapped it with a torn strip of cotton. "You're lucky," he said. "That bullet missed everything important." The boy looked at him, silent. There was trust in his eyes now, but also fear. Not of Elijah, of something outside. "Got a name?" Elijah asked as he tied the bandage. The boy hesitated. Then, softly, he said, "Koa." Elijah nodded. "Name's Elijah. You can rest here, Koa." He stood up and checked the windows. The wind had picked up, shaking the trees outside. But it was not the wind that made Elijah's stomach turn. It was the sound that came next, distant hoofbeats. Then a voice. Loud, angry. "Hey, Cartwright, we know you're in there." Elijah's heart jumped. He moved to the window and blew out the lamp. The room fell into darkness, lit only by moonlight. He peeked through the curtain. 5 riders. Shadows on horseback. They were just past the gate, their rifles clear in the night. "You got something that belongs to us." One shouted. "Hand him over, and we'll leave you be." Koa pressed against the wall. Elijah could feel his fear like heat in the room. Elijah stepped to the door, rifle in hand, but did not open it. He called out, calm but firm, "There's nothing here that belongs to you." "You sure about that?" The voice came back. "We tracked him here. That boy cut one of our men. He was bleeding when I found him," Elijah said. "Maybe you should ask why." "Last warning," the man growled. "Bring him out, or we come take him." Elijah looked down at Koa. The boy's eyes were wide, but he was silent. Elijah tightened his grip on the rifle. "I don't hand over children to men with guns," he said. There was silence outside, then the sound of horses turning away. But Elijah knew they would not go far. He looked at Koa again. "You stay quiet. You stay inside. I'll deal with them." Koa nodded once, and Elijah knew this was no longer just about shelter. This was now about standing between right and wrong. Elijah sat at the edge of his porch, rifle across his knees. The night had grown still again, but he could not relax. Somewhere out in the darkness, the riders were waiting, watching, planning. Inside, Koa slept on a bedroll near the hearth, wrapped in a blanket Elijah had kept from his own childhood. The boy had not spoken much since the men left, but his eyes, when they met Elijah's, still burned with quiet fire. Elijah kept his ears open. The men had not gone far. He had seen the way they looked. Hard faces, cruel eyes. These are not lawmen. They were traders from the southern routes. Men who dealt in stolen goods, livestock, and sometimes worse. He had seen their kind before. At dawn, Elijah rode to a nearby ridge to get a better view of the land. Sure enough, he spotted smoke from a small camp about a mile away. They were not retreating. They were waiting for something, or someone. Back at the cabin, Koa was awake, sitting up with his hand pressed gently against his side. "They're still out there," he said quietly. Elijah nodded. "I saw their camp. 5 of them, maybe more to come." Koa's jaw tightened. "They won't stop." "Why are they hunting you, Koa?" Elijah asked, his voice calm. "You hurt one of them?" Koa lowered his head. "They stole from us. Horses. I followed them. I tried to take them back. They caught me. I ran." That was all Elijah needed to know. He sighed and stood. "You were brave, but now they want to make an example." "I should leave," Koa said. "They will hurt you." Elijah gave him a look. "If they wanted to hurt me, they would have done it last night. They're waiting, planning. That means they're afraid, or at least unsure." He walked to the corner of the room and opened a chest. Inside were things he had not touched in years: a second rifle, old ammunition, some tools he had once used for hunting predators that threatened his cattle. "You're going to fight them?" Koa asked. "I'm going to be ready," Elijah said. "This place isn't much, but it's my land. I've lived here a long time. I know every path, every hiding spot." He looked at the boy. "They may come back tonight, or tomorrow, but I won't be surprised." As the day passed, Elijah fortified the house. He barred the windows, dug a shallow trench near the barn, checked his traps, and cleaned every weapon twice. He moved with the steady hands of a man who had seen trouble before and survived it. By sunset, the land looked peaceful again, but Elijah knew better. Kindness had a cost, and sometimes mercy came with a price you had to pay in full. The evening wind picked up as Elijah finished reinforcing the outer fence. He had added sharpened posts along the edges and spread-dried leaves near the back path to hear footsteps if anyone came close. It was not much, but it would slow someone down, and sometimes that was enough. Inside the cabin, Koa sat near the fire, quiet as ever. His wound was healing, but his thoughts seemed far away. "You rest," Elijah told him. "We'll keep watching shifts. They may not come tonight, but they will come." Koa said nothing. He stared into the flames, then slowly stood and walked to the door. Elijah watched him puzzled. Koa stepped outside, past the porch, and looked up at the stars. Then he cupped his hand around his mouth and made a sound, low and soft, like a bird calling to its mate. It was nothing like a shout, just a gentle echo through the air. He did it again. Then a third time. Elijah stood still. What are you doing? Koa looked at him calmly. Calling help. Elijah blinked. Help. Koa nodded. They do not come unless called. It was a strange thing to say. Elijah wanted to ask more, but the boy had already returned to the cabin and lay down again. The night grew quiet. Elijah kept watch from the window, eyes moving between the trees and the trail. Hours passed. Nothing moved. The stars shifted, and the fire in the cabin burned low. Then he felt it. Not a sound, not a flash of movement, but something had changed. The land itself seemed to tighten, like the stillness before a storm. He stepped outside and scanned the hills. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Then, between the tall rocks at the edge of his land, he saw it. A figure on horseback. Silent. Still. Then another. Then more. Emerging like ghosts from the shadows. They did not ride forward. They held their place. Watching. Waiting. Elijah counted at least a dozen. Maybe more. He did not raise his rifle. He did not move. The figures were not the men from before. These riders were different. Calm. Deliberate. As if they had come not in anger, but in answer. He went back inside. Koa was sitting up, fully awake. You called them, Elijah said. Koa nodded once. They heard. Who are they? The boy's voice was quiet. Family. Elijah's pulse slowed. He had thought he was alone in this. One man against many. Now it seemed the ground had shifted. Whatever storm was coming, he would not face it alone. The cabin door creaked open with the first light of dawn. Elijah stood by the window, rifle in hand. The shapes on the ridge had not moved all night. They had watched, waited, but never stepped forward. Until now, a single rider approached. He came slowly, without fear. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and calm in every step. His horse moved like it knew the land better than time itself. When a man stopped in front of the cabin, he dismounted in one motion, smooth, quiet, controlled. Elijah opened the door but stayed in the frame. The man looked him straight in the eyes. His face was sharp and weathered. His black hair was tied back. He wore a long coat made of hide, and at his side was a curved blade, old but cared for. His expression was still, but there was power behind it, the kind that did not need a shout. You are the man who took in the boy, the stranger said. I am, Elijah replied. He is my sister's son. Elijah lowered the rifle slightly. He said you might come. The man nodded. My name is Halo. I come from the northern cliffs. Elijah had heard stories of the northern cliffs. Rough, highlands where few dare travel. Men said the people there were as strong as stone and twice as patient. You have my thanks, Halo said, voice quiet but clear. You found him before death did. I only did what was right, Elijah replied. No child should bleed alone. Halo stepped closer, eyes scanning the land. The men who hunted him, where are they now? Elijah hesitated. They camped nearby last night. 5 of them, maybe more coming. Halo's jaw tightened. They will answer. Elijah shook his head. I understand your anger, but if you attack now, you'll bring soldiers. They won't care who's right. Halo looked at him. You asked me to wait. I ask you to think, Elijah said. Let them show what they truly are. Then we answer. Halo turned his eyes toward the hills, where his riders still waited in silence. He said nothing for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. You would protect him, even if it brings fire to your door? I already have, Elijah answered. There was a pause. Then Halo gave his smallest nod. You're not like the others, he said. For that, I will listen for now. Elijah stepped aside. Come in. He'll want to see you. Inside, Koa was sitting up, blanket around his shoulders. When he saw Halo, his face changed. Relief, respect, and something close to love. Uncle, Koa said softly. Halo crossed the room in 2 steps and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. You're safe now, he said. But the fire in his eyes told Elijah that this was only the beginning. Justice was patient, but not silent. Night fell again, but this time the land did not feel empty. From the hills, riders moved like shadows. They did not speak. They did not ride in groups. They spread out, silent and slow, taking position across the land like threads in a great net. Some crouched in the tall grass. Others lay behind rocks, rifles resting in their hands. Elijah watched from his porch. The moonlight showed only glimpses, faces painted with quiet strength, bows strung tight, eyes steady. They had not come for war. Not yet. Inside the cabin, Koa had fallen asleep again. His breathing was deeper now, less painful. The color had started to return to his cheeks. Halo sat across from Elijah at the table, a mug of warm water in his hands. They had not spoken for some time, but silence between men like them was not heavy. It was respectful. Elijah finally broke it. You have trained them well. Halo nodded. They were trained by the land. I only reminded them how to listen to it. Elijah looked out the window. This land used to be quiet. It still is, Halo said. You just stopped hearing it. Elijah looked down at his hands. I came here 20 years ago. Thought I was escaping noise. Towns, deals, shouting. I bought this valley with money I earned the hard way. Fenced it, worked it, called it peace. And now? Halo asked. Elijah shook his head. Now I see peace was never the point. It was what I did with the quiet that mattered. Halo's eyes were calm. We have lost much, too. Families, forest rivers. But we do not forget what matters. Like that boy, Elijah said. My sister died in the last winter, Halo replied. She was sick, too far from help. Koa took her place beside the fire every night. He never cried. He said he would keep her warm, even if she could not feel it. Elijah looked toward the sleeping child. He has a warrior's heart. Halo gave a small nod. But he is still a child. They sat in silence again. Outside, the air was still. Even the animals seemed to hold their breath. At last, Halo stood. When the sun comes, he said, they will return. They always do, Elijah replied. They will expect fear or force. Elijah stood, too. Let's give them a choice instead. Halo raised an eyebrow. You think they deserve it? No, Elijah said, but we deserve to be better. Halo stepped to the window. He looked out over the land, where his warriors lay like shadows against the earth. We give them one chance, he said. One, Elijah agreed. They did not shake hands. They did not need to. Outside, the hills were no longer empty. They were waiting, and when the morning came, so would the reckoning. The first light of dawn crept across the valley like a breath held too long. Elijah stood on the porch, his rifle resting in his arms. Halo stood behind him, silent, still as the hills. The warriors were nowhere to be seen, but Elijah knew they were out there, watching, waiting. Inside the cabin, Koa slept, one hand resting on his chest. The wound had stopped bleeding, but the weight of fear still lay on his small face. Then they came. 5 riders rode up the trail, loud and bold. Their horses kicked up dust. Their eyes were sharp, their mouths full of threats before they even reached the gate. Well, the lead man called. Still standing, Cartwright. It was the same voice from before. Rough, mocking. We gave you a chance, he shouted. You should have taken it. Another man laughed. We'll burn the whole place down if we have to. Elijah took a single step forward. You should leave. That brought more laughter. You got a death wish, old man. The leader raised his hand. Bring out the boy. We're done talking. Elijah's voice was calm. You might want to look around before you decide that. The riders paused. The air shifted. And then, without a sound of warning, they rose. For the tall grass. From behind rocks. From the very earth itself. One by one. Then 3. Then a dozen. Warriors stood with arrows drawn and rifles raised. Silent. Still. Faces painted with marks of their ancestors. Shadows turned to men, wrapped in the cold steel of patience and power. The riders froze. Not one of them spoke. Not one reached for a weapon. The lead man looked around, pale now. His bravado drained like water from a broken jar. What is this? He muttered. Halo stepped beside Elijah and spoke, his voice sharp as stone. This is what happens when you chase blood into sacred land. Elijah added, You came here thinking you were hunters, but you were only walking into your own trap. One of the younger riders began to shake. Another whispered something under his breath, eyes wide. The leader tried to gather himself. You think this scares us? Halo's tone turned cold. No, but it should. Silence again, heavy and deep. The 5 riders looked at the hills, at the weapons pointed at them from every direction. The morning sun caught the glint of sharpened blades. No one moved. No one blinked. Elijah stepped off the porch. I'm giving you one chance, he said. Turn around. Walk away. Make this right. The leader swallowed hard. His hands were trembling. What if we don't? Halo's voice was like thunder before a storm. Then you will not walk away at all. The men said nothing, but their eyes said everything. They had come for a boy. Now they stood before an army, and they were very, very alone. No one moved. The riders sat stiff in their saddles, caught between fear and pride. Around them, the warriors remained still, bows drawn, rifles aimed, ready to act at a breath. Elijah stepped forward again. The wood of the porch creaked behind him. He lowered his rifle just slightly. This does not have to end in blood, he said. You can still choose the right way. The lead rider, a tall man with a red bandana, looked at him with a mix of anger and shame. You protect a thief, he spat. That boy stabbed one of us. He was trying to stop you from stealing what belonged to his people, Elijah answered. That's not theft. That's courage. Another rider, younger and more nervous, pointed at Halo. And who's this one? Another hero. Halo stepped forward. The morning light caught his face. Calm, unbending. I am his uncle, he said, and I am here for justice. The lead man scoffed. Justice? What does that mean to your kind? It means this, Halo replied. You stole from our family. Horses, grain, peace. You chased a child through the dirt and called it a game. You want to walk away? Then you return what you took. All of it. That's ridiculous, one of the riders said. Halo did not blink. 5 horses, 3 sacks of grain, an apology, and your promise to never return to this land again. The silence was thick. Then, the youngest of the 5 snapped. This is insane, he shouted, yanking his reins. I'm not dying out here over some kid and a sack of oats. He kicked his horse hard, turning toward the gap between the hills. Do not run, Halo said, but it was too late. The rider took off in a cloud of dust. Before he reached 20 yards, 2 arrows flew. One struck his shoulder. The other hit lower. He tumbled from the saddle, hitting the earth hard. He groaned once, and then went still. The horse kept running. The other riders stared, eyes wide with terror. Elijah turned to the leader. That didn't have to happen. The man's face had gone pale. He looked at the boy lying in the dirt, then at the men still standing around him, then at Halo. What happens if we say yes? He asked, voice dry and shaking. You return what was stolen, Halo said. You make things right. You leave this land and do not come back. And if we say no, then you will join him in the dust, Halo answered. The leader closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he nodded once. I need time, he said. You have 3 days, Halo replied. Not one more. The man turned his horse slowly. The others followed. Elijah watched them ride back the way they came, smaller with every step. They had been loud when they arrived, but now they rode in silence. The next morning brought no gunfire, no shouting, only stillness. Elijah stood by the fence line, watching the hills. His eyes were tired but alert. Behind him, Halo sat sharpening a blade with slow, careful strokes. The warriors had melted back into the land. They were still nearby. Elijah could feel them, but not one was visible now. By midday, dust appeared on the trail again. 3 riders, the same men from before, minus 1. Their faces were no longer proud. They looked smaller now, worn down by fear, by shame, by the truth they had seen. They stopped just beyond the gate. Elijah met them there, rifle across his chest. One of the men raised a hand. We don't want trouble. You already brought it, Elijah said calmly. Halo stepped beside him. His eyes were steady. His voice, even quieter than before, somehow felt heavier. You left your friend in the dirt, he said, but you still have a chance. The leader cleared his throat. We can't get all the horses back. We sold them, scattered across different towns. But we'll try. You have 7 days, Halo said. No lies, no tricks. And if we fail? One of the riders asked. Halo's jaw tightened. Then we come for more than horses. The men went pale. And the grain? The leader asked. Bring it, Halo said. 3 sacks. As you took. The leader nodded. We'll do what we can. Elijah stepped forward. His voice was calm, but sharp as glass. There's one more thing. The men looked at him. You do not come back, he said. Not in 3 weeks. Not in 3 years. Not ever. We don't plan to, the leader said. This land's cursed. Elijah's stare did not break. It is not cursed. It is protected. The men looked around nervously, as if expecting warriors to rise again from the hills. None did, but the silence was louder than any threat. You leave today, Halo said, and in 7 days, you return to the canyon at dusk. You drop what you owe, then you ride away. And if you're smart, you do not look back. The men nodded. They turned their horses and rode off once more. Elijah and Halo watched until the dust settled. They may not keep their word, Elijah said. No, Halo replied, but we will keep ours. Elijah looked toward the cabin, where Koa sat in the doorway. The boy stood now without help, still thin, still healing, but stronger. What happens if they come back with lies? Elijah asked. Then they see what truth looks like, Halo answered. Elijah nodded. The land was still again, but under the surface, everything had changed. 7 days passed, and on the 8th morning, the valley was quiet. The cattle arrived at first light, 50 head, driven in by tired, silent riders. They did not stop at the gate. They left the animals in the canyon and turned around without a word. An hour later, 3 sacks of grain were dropped near the old trail. No one asked for thanks. No one stayed to explain. The debt had been paid. By noon, the hills were empty again. The warriors vanished as they had come, without sound, without tracks. Even Halo left without farewell. Only a single mark carved into the wood of Elijah's porch remained, a mountain above a wave. A sign of promise, a memory of honor. Koa stood at the edge of the fence, wrapped in a fresh blanket. His side still ached, but he stood tall. It is time, he said. Elijah stood beside him, arms crossed. You sure you're ready? Koa nodded. They will come for me soon. Elijah looked toward the northern ridge. In the distance, shadows moved between the trees. A quiet signal. They were there. He turned to the boy. You ever need a place to rest, this door stays open. Koa gave him a long look. His eyes were older now, wiser. You gave me more than rest, he said. You gave me breath when I was losing it. Elijah swallowed hard. You gave me something too, son. What? Reminded me what courage looks like. Koa reached out and shook his hand. His grip was firm, steady. Then he turned and walked toward the ridge without looking back. Elijah stood alone again. The cabin was quiet. The fire had burned low. The tools were back on their hooks. But something was different. The silence was no longer empty. It was full of memory, of meaning, of something sacred. That night, as Elijah sat by the fire, he thought he heard it again, a sound from beyond the trees, low and soft, like a bird calling to the wind. He smiled. He did not rise. He did not speak. He simply sat in the stillness, knowing he was no longer alone. And though the boy was gone, the echo remained. If the story moved you, let us know in the comments. Have you ever witnessed quiet bravery or chosen to protect someone simply because it was right? Please like, share, and subscribe to hear more powerful stories from the frontier of the human spirit.